Hello, everybody, and welcome to A Bright Founders Talk at Temi. Temi is an international software development company that designs, builds, and delivers software for sustainable businesses and promising startups. Welcome to our podcast, where we bring you the most inspiring stories of entrepreneurs and experts in the software development industry. And each week, we interview successful leaders who share their unique journeys and valuable insights. I'm your host, Barry, and today we're lucky enough to be joined by a remarkable guest, Jay Shah, CTO and co-founder at Kioku. Hello, Jay. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Barry. Yeah, thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Lovely to see you. So first of all, for people who don't know you or your company, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself and the company that you work at?
I'm Jay. I'm the CTO and co-founder at Kiroku, as you mentioned. And I guess previous to Kiroku, I was studying natural language processing and advanced computer science at Cambridge, which then led me through a series of events to start Kiroku, which is a software company, and we help dentists and doctors automate their record keeping.
I did have a quick conversation with you about this, your name. So some of you may know that I speak Japanese, and Kiroku actually means documentation or record in Japanese. Is that coincidence, or was that the inspiration for the name?
Not a coincidence. Inspiration is probably a stretch. The actual story behind it was me and my co-founder Hannah. We were thinking, "Oh, what should we name our company? We need something." And one of our friends who's Japanese just said, find a Japanese name because the domains are all available and you can get the .com." So we were then asking him, what does this mean? What does that mean? And we really liked the name Kiroku. It turns out the domain wasn't available, so we actually tried Kiroku.com, but we kept the name.
It's really interesting that. Thank you for sharing that. So can you just share your journey into specifically technology and the steps that led you up to being co-founder of Kioku?
Yeah, sure. So I guess I can kind of start in high school onwards. So this was probably 15 years ago now. I love maths. I love physics. I loved building things. And one of my, I guess, older friends or my brother's friends did computer science, and I just liked the idea that you could go to university, and on day one you can just end up building something. In combination with that, I think somebody once said, I think it was Matt Clifford, who said, "This is the first time in history where you can build a £1 million company from your bedroom." And something about that really appealed to me. So I started studying computer science at uni. I was at UCL for my undergrad. Again, just love building things, love coding, love the algorithm side of things. And then I wasn't sure what to do after 3 years. So I was like, okay, let me jump in a bit deeper. And I saw machine learning as an area of interest. This was 2012. So when AI wasn't really that big, but people started to get the concept of it. And then I did a master's at Cambridge, and this was in natural language processing. And in case anyone doesn't know, this is where how computers understand language, kind of everything behind ChatGPT, Google, all the things that are going on right now in the world. And I was fascinated by it. It was really interesting. Again, this was just before there was a bit of hype, but it was definitely not what it is today. And it was really interesting just learning a bit about this. And it got to the end of that degree, and I had to decide, do I want to stay for a PhD? Do I want to join a bank like a lot of my friends? And then this interesting opportunity came along from Entrepreneur First, where they offered me a place on a 6-month program where essentially you go there as an individual, you meet people, and what they do, they help tailor and mentor yourself to start a company essentially. And that's where I was like, you know what, it's 6 months of my life. I don't know what I want to do now, but if I was to take a risk, it would be like now is the perfect time. So joined Entrepreneur First, and I was there amongst 80 people. And I walked in thinking, oh, I've got a master's from Cambridge. I'm the hot shot right now. I walked in, and that was probably the most underqualified person there. There were people from NASA, people from like the early days of Google DeepMind, medical doctors. My co-founder, he's a medical dentist. And it was just quite cool to be surrounded by a group of people that were so good at what they do and so passionate.
There's never a wrong time to eat humble pie, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So that's really interesting. Why dentistry? Why healthcare? Was there a particular reason why you chose that particular field?
Yeah, so there wasn't a reason that I chose to go into it. What happened was at Entrepreneur First, what they do is there's about 80 people, and me and Hannah were just kind of friends through the program. We got on really well, and Hannah had this. Hannah went away and realized that dentists spend so long with note taking. She's a dentist herself, so she went around and she was, really frustrated at the problem that a dentist spends, 8 hours a day with patients, but 2 hours of the 8 hours is usually spent note taking. And this is not something you normally see from the patient side of things, because as soon as you go, they're writing notes. During your appointment, they're writing notes, and even before. And it's just a problem where she was like, it's repetitive. It's something that needs to be solved. And the way Entrepreneur First works is you kind of pair up. It's almost like speed dating. You try the idea for like a week and you just see, do you work well together? Is there traction in the idea? And how quickly can you validate that it's actually a problem?
That was kind of fortuitous. If that hadn't happened, do you think you would have gone on the trajectory that you went on?
Probably not with healthcare, as in probably not with dentistry. I didn't know anything about dentistry before meeting Hannah.
In terms of like being like, this is your first like startup company, isn't it?
Yeah,
This how do you go about like with networking? How do you go about building those contacts? Were you like really lucky, or did you have to go out spreading the feelers out, trying to get in contact with people?
as in I definitely think there's an element of luck in there, but I guess it's being at the right place at the right time. University helps a lot. I think especially Cambridge was very entrepreneurial, one of our first investors. So that was useful, just having that network. Entrepreneur first, like I said, just being around people that was so intelligent and so good at what they do and with experience already helps. So I was in a room with 80 people that were just amazing. And then from there, the network grows. And one thing it does really force you to do is get you outside your comfort zone. So I had to go and talk to people. I had to go meet people. I had to talk to investors. But arguably, it was a lot of luck. I was in the right place at the right time as well.
Okay, so when we're at the start, so you're starting, you're designing your platform. What was the most like challenging technical hurdle that you had to solve?
I think the technology wasn't the biggest hurdle. I think it was just getting customers. I think it was getting people to trust us. Two graduates, like what was like 23 years old people, didn't really know what we're doing in life, and to get them to trust us with a very important part of their day, and to be okay with a system that's buggy, a system that's built by someone who barely knew how to code at the time. So I think that was it. It was like we could build things. I could stay up for 7 days straight and build something. The hard part then was getting somebody to actually try it and give us genuine feedback on what next to build. And that, progressively that got easier as you got more customers. But initially, that was probably the most challenging thing.
Do you have the gift of the gab? Like, are you able to sell quite easily, or is that
Uh,
something that you had to
th-
practice?
it's something I've had to practice, but my co-founder, I think she's naturally talented at that.
Oh, okay.
Um,
She picked up the slack, did she?
she picked up the slack. I was the one building things, and she was the one talking to people and getting, convincing them to actually try it.
So let's talk a little bit more about the AI then. So Kioku actually uses AI to streamline clinical documentation. But how do you balance automation with the need for accuracy in medical notes? Because obviously it's super important, right?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I guess there's various levels of AI, right? AI, as we see now, is just LLMs, ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, where people are used to, I guess, the system's hallucinating or the solutions creating misinformation. I guess we've had a version of these problems for a number of years, and the most critical thing is the clinician has to have a say at the end. I think right now, at least where AI is, you can't trust it fully. In case something's wrong, the ownership is still on the clinician. It's still on the doctor or the dentist. So what we do on our system, we put a huge emphasis on design to make it really, really easy for the clinician to actually check what's happened and to make that review process really easy. Because you can quite imagine, like, if the review process is not easy, then the clinician takes just as long using the AI system as if they were to write the notes themselves. So from the get-go, we made that process as easy as possible for them, just to kind of, write an AI writes the notes, they can review it in 10 seconds or less, and then they're good to go. And if changes are needed, to make that changing process really, really easy.
And when you were starting this out, were you thinking like, oh, these are going to be the problems, and you were actually right, or did problems arise that you had never considered before you started?
That's a great question. I think there's a new problem every week that I wouldn't expect. I think from start, as any founder knows, when you start the company, you think, okay, the product's the only thing that you need to build, but it's not. It's you think something's going to work, and I've learned this mistake 100 times now or more. That you build something, you spend a long time building something you think somebody wants, and then you realize they actually just don't care about it. Or you build something and you think no one's going to care about it, you just put it in, and you realize like, wow, it's one of the core features that we have at Kiroku. And that's only the product side of things. Then you've got the sales side of things, you know the cycles and everything else that goes on with that.
So you've got this great product, yeah, you've worked on it hard, it's a done deal. Now it's time to sell it. Now it's time to get the buy-in. Now, lots of people, my generation particularly, are often slow to adopt like new technologies. I'm only just starting to use ChatGPT now. I'm probably like 10 years behind everyone else. How do you get people who maybe like, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, maybe they're desperate for it, they really want AI. What's your experience of this? Is it
Yeah,
negativity or positivity?
I think it's come in waves. I think when we first started, we were quite keen on, we don't need thousands of customers on day one. We need a couple, tens of customers to try it and to give us really good feedback. And to get customers then, it was way more through network, just to talk to people, to find those early adopters. And that had its own challenges, right? You can't just give it to anybody who's expecting a polished product. You need to find early adopters. And through iterations, we got there in a couple of months, and we found the people that could help us build up this product. So that was the first part. Then I say we got quite lucky. It was obviously a bad time, but COVID actually helped us as a company because 3 months after we launched our product and started to charge for it, we had, I think, maybe 50 customers, maybe less. COVID hit, and
Yeah.
suddenly every dentist in the UK was forced to stop working for about 3 months unless they were doing emergency appointments. And what we did overnight was we just made Kioku free for everybody. And when a dentist stops working, literally they can't work. There's nothing else for them to do because they can't go in. So a lot of them just actually spend that time to retrain themselves, to find new tools that helped, and that just timing wise, it really helped our company. So within 3 months, I think we 5x'd our growth. People were trying our system, and luckily with the timing, it also worked out. Everybody suddenly had access to video calling and understood what Zoom or Google Meets was. So we did loads of onboarding during that time, loads of help, and through that period, we not even, well, more than quadrupled our growth in terms of users. And then the word of mouth started to go through. So then, like, each customer found more customers. And I think that was the only way to start. We obviously did loads of advertising and things that just haven't worked. We spent a lot of money on things that haven't worked.
Yeah.
But I think once the product got to a point where it was self-fulfilling, we normally
Yeah.
find at least 40% of our users are hear about it from somebody else. So, and that
Like
helps.
word of
Yeah,
mouth is like one of the biggest, best ways of advertising, isn't it? It's definitely people saying,
definitely.
"I love
Yeah.
this product,"
Yeah.
and doing it free during COVID. That was a brain streak. That was a really good idea. How did you come up with that? Was it just something you think, do you know what, this is a strike while the iron's hot, or was it just like, oh, shall we try it? I'm not sure it'll work.
I think we just came from it where it was kind of unfair to charge somebody who's not going to use a product. So that was part of it, and we were like, well, we literally just launched and started charging for it. Everyone's just going to cancel and leave us, and no one's going to pay for it. So it was kind of, we're lucky we went early with the idea, but it was inevitable. If we didn't do it then, we would have had to do it a few weeks later.
Yeah, I know what you mean about COVID. It was a bad time, but from lots of businesses' perspectives, that was like a key defining point for growth in companies. I think maybe it would have gone that way naturally anyway, but I think what COVID did was probably just focus it and made it a lot more extreme, the growth. Would you agree with
Exactly.
that, or am I
Yeah,
wrong?
yeah, 100%. And we were quite lucky with our fundraising cycle. So I think we raised a couple of months before COVID, so we had enough money to kind of pass through and not have to rely on revenue during that time.
Okay, so let's say let's put ourselves back in the buyer seat. So we're interested in Koroku. Yeah, we want to try it out. We want to give it a go. How do you make that implementation seamless? Is it easy, or is there going to be a little bit of discord while we get things set up?
Yeah, so for 98% of our customers, they can sign up to our website and get started within 5 minutes. A bit of onboarding in that time. What was different from our product is dentistry is quite an old field when it comes to technology. So one of the key challenges was when somebody signed up, they always found it too easy. They expected somebody to come into their practice, talk them through the system, buy a license for a year, and I guess for me, that was quite new because I'm from the technology side. So I'm used to no self on board and get started in a couple of minutes and cancel. It's a monthly rolling contract. If you don't like it, just cancel. And it was quite funny how that was something that was hard to understand for a lot of people.
Mm.
But that did break a lot of barriers and it made it really easy for us just to get going because it meant that somebody could just try the system from home. And even cloud systems and things like that were quite rare in dentistry at the time.
Are there any other pitfalls or issues that practices seem to have when they're trying to digitize or automate their workflows?
I do think it's mindset. I think, well, there's two things. So one is mindset of just the practice in general, but there is also a gatekeeper, which is that practice manager. And often they're not the clinician themselves. If they were to adopt a new software, I guess typically pre-Kiroku, they would normally have to go to practice manager, get that signed off for the whole practice, sign a multi-year deal, and then the adoption goes towards a clinician. What we decided to do was flip down its head. And the way we charge for our product is we actually charge the individual clinician because it's for them. So it's, if you want to make your day well, I guess 25% more efficient, then they pay for our product directly themselves. And what that means is they have total ownership on the product, and they have, we go to them as the buyer rather than a practice manager who then has to sell the product and onboard every one of their clinicians.
Do you have the opportunity to like receive feedback from customers and stakeholders? Is that something that you have, or?
Yeah, definitely. That's something we put in from the early days. We were actually one of the first companies in the dental field just to put a live chat into the platform. And to me, it sounded ridiculous because every other platform had it. But again, dental software is a bit old. But so I was in the early days, I was constantly on support, just talking to customers. Anytime there was an issue, I'd try to get on a call with them. Now we've got a brilliant person, Bryony, who is just all over the customer success and feedback. And I guess part of the job she loves is just getting feedback and then iterating that through to our product team.
It's always really interesting when you get that direct link with the customer, especially for feedback. Now, there is a saying that the customer is always right, but in a pragmatic world, there are sometimes a customer might have an expectation or maybe like a wish list for something that actually isn't really pragmatic. Like, how do you decide, like, oh, yeah, this is great, we're going to go with this? And it's like, oh, that's never going to happen. Let's be realistic.
No, that's a great question. And that's something I'd say I've fallen into the trap of a couple of times when building something that the customer says they want. I think over years, I've learned that you need to listen to the problem, not the solution. And I think our product designer, or Will, he's fantastic at this. He's normally my gatekeeper. When I bring him a solution, he's like, "No, Jay, let's find out what the core problem is, and then let's build against that, rather than coming up then the customer finding the solution."
Yeah, I'm the kind of person who gets very excited by new ideas. I don't like the technicalities of like realism and cost and practicality. I just think, oh yeah, this is really great. Do you find that you have to keep your feet on the floor sometimes?
Definitely, I completely agree with that. Get very excited over small ideas. I guess the key difference that's happened over the last 6 months, though, is AI has allowed us to speed our development up so much faster than ever before. I'll give you an example. So if we had an idea for a feature internally, and we knew that feature would take, say, 3 months to build, we would do quite a big process before that to validate if that feature was a good idea, how customers interact with it, how it works. Now, often a 3-month feature can take about 5 days or less to build.
Oh wow, that's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, I think our engineering team has been great at adopting some of the AI systems. And what that's meant is our designer can essentially create a prototype himself using AI, not need to know how to code or anything like that. Test it internally, test it thoroughly, and then we can build the whole feature within a week and actually just see users if they use it or not.
Wow, that's
And
amazing.
that's kind of 3 months to a week. So you can imagine that scale when it does follow. Like there's often a day where I could get a month's worth of engineering done in a day, and it's ridiculous at the moment, and
That's
it's great for
incredible.
us. Yeah,
Can I get you to get your crystal ball out and peer into the future just for a little moment? What do you see will be the biggest advance in maybe like AI support in your field, or more generally, if you want to get general, like say the next 5 years?
um, I think 5 years is hard, and the reason I say that is because the rate at which AI is moving, I don't think I've ever seen anything move this fast. So I studied with some of the leading people in the world in this field, and this was 10 years ago. Almost everything I studied is relevant now to some extent because it's just moved so fast. So when I say kind of the next immediate steps and where I think it will come from, I think one of the biggest breakthroughs has actually been development in building products and building ideas. And what that's enabled is suddenly anybody can build a proof of concept. You don't need to be an engineer anymore. I think there is still a barrier between scalable production ready code to just a quick prototype. But I think those barriers are breaking really fast. And soon the average person with an idea no longer has to spend millions of pounds on an engineering team and a team of 10 people. They can just do something in their bedroom themselves overnight and validate if an idea is true. And I think what that means down the line is suddenly there's a lot more competition for simple ideas, and better products will be formed because of that.
Hmm.
And then I think
So,
that's going to then that's going to trickle on to better support. Like you said, suddenly there's tools that I'm using now that just weren't around 6 months ago that have made our life so much easier. Our customer support now, 60% of the queries are answered instantly through a chatbot, to a level where somebody probably doesn't even know it's a chatbot.
yeah, that is really interesting as well because I have used some chatbots before and I can just tell immediately it's a robot just by the way that it
Exactly.
speaks. And sometimes I think, oh, I'm not sure. Do you see that as a success? Just probably a little as an offside. Do you want your customers to know they're talking to a chatbot, or do you want them to think they're talking to a human being? What's your thoughts?
I've always been in the side of I want them to feel like they're talking to a human being. But I think recently my mind has changed on that. Because I don't think if I break down what the actual problem is there, you want them to feel the trust, right? You don't want them to feel like they've been responded to through a machine who doesn't really know what they're talking. But the difference is now if you look at the world, everyone talks to ChatGPT, but that is a chatbot.
Yeah.
But people talk to it like it's a human, and they often trust that more than they would a human. So I think the trust factor is changing, which makes me think like now I actually don't mind if somebody feels like they're talking to a chatbot,
Yeah.
as long as they're getting the information they need and they feel like it's trustworthy.
As another offside question, do you think people talk differently if they know it's a bot and if it's a person? Do you think they treat it differently? And if they do, how?
I think from my experience, they would be more direct if it's a chatbot, less please than thank yous, but also I think, and this could be good or bad. When you feel like you're talking to a human, you're generally more polite, or at least most customers are more polite. When you're talking to a chatbot, you kind of just go straight to what you want, right?
Yeah.
And that does lead to efficiency gains quite often. It's not always great when you have an angry customer and they want to talk through. Usually, a human on the other side is actually quite nice there because they can bring it down. But I think there is advantages and disadvantages. But like I said, I think by the end of this year, the trust factor is going to change a lot, and that's going to change the dynamic in which humans start talking to AI chatbots.
Yeah. And another question about AI, and feel free if you don't want to answer this question because I know you work for an AI kind of technology sector, so you have to be positive. Are you overwhelmingly positive about the role of AI and the future? Like when I speak to CEOs and CTOs, there is a bit of a mixed review on terms of it. Some have like a Terminator-esque approach of what AI is going to do, especially like jobs market, in terms of the role that it will play in society. And some people actually think actually AI isn't going to achieve the things that we want it to achieve, and we're probably over egging or overselling its abilities. Like I know that you might be a little bit biased in this one, but where do you see yourself in that spectrum?
Yeah. So I'm a huge AI optimist. That doesn't mean the long terms can be really bad. I think there is a huge possibility that in the long term, when I say long term, I'm thinking 20 to 30 years down the line, things could be pretty bad. But in the short term, I think the gains from AI is going to be outstanding, and it's something that we can't really predict at the moment. But the consequences are going to be massive, and we're starting to see that already. We're starting to see that. I guess just the whole upskill in reality. I think was it Sam Altman said this, where he's like, "My kids will never be smarter than AI," which is quite rare, right? And but what it means is that people going in high school now will have this opportunity of having the best tutor in any field right next.
Yeah.
It breaks down economic barriers because you don't need to have loads of money to be able to get this kind of education and skill. So I think there will be dramatic shifts in the world over the next 5, 10 years.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely revolutionize. But in which way and how and to what extent is probably the only questions that we have
Exactly.
outstanding, right? Unfortunately, Jay, we're nearly coming towards the end, but I always like to ask one question. But you are a successful entrepreneur. What advice would you give to other people who may be in the early stages, maybe thinking, I want to set up my own company? What is the first thing that they should do or the first piece of thing that they should think about?
Yeah. Well, I'm still on the journey myself, still learning every day. But I'd say probably two things that I think have worked out well for us. One is just try and get traction as early as possible. Don't feel like you need to wait until you have the perfect idea or the perfect co-founder or the perfect environment or perfect time. Just find a way to get traction really easily. There's a great book on this called The Lean Startup, which most people have probably read about if they're in the founder world. But for me, that book was a game changer. It just shows you how you can break things down to simple ideas, get them tested, and find out if your problem's actually a problem and if it's worth solving. That really helped. And the second one, just enjoy the process. Being a founder is tough. You're going to have really bad days. You're going to have really good days. If you can't enjoy the process, it's going to be a really, really big challenge.
So I did actually have a little Google of the company name just before we started, and it was a top item on the search. So congratulations on that. So anyone who wants to get in contact, anyone who wants to see further information, do you want to do a little bit of shameless selling, and then we can fade out?
Yeah, sure. So essentially, Kioku helps a clinician save up to 2 hours a day. It costs less than £1 a day for the clinician to sign up, and it's a rolling monthly contract. So they could just try it, sign up within a couple of minutes, and if it's not for them, it's not for them. But I'm sure you'll stick around.
There you go, guys. What are you waiting for? No harm in checking it out. Go to the website. Looks amazing. Jay, I just want to thank you again so much for taking the time to talk with me today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
That was Jay Shah, CTO and co-founder at Kioku.